Where would that be? That's very interesting. I think it is Edinburgh. The chap who his face is familiar, you see. I can't believe this. How can you recognise John? It's difficult to recognise him. That's him. And that must be him. Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, but that actually is it. You know, that's Fettes. Or is it? Could be. I'd have to identify that garden decoration. But this is incredible. That he is. I mean, all of this is fascinating. And oh my gosh! It's Matthias. It's incredible. Yes, I've seen that photograph before. That is the beautiful Sebastian. And here he is with, what's his name? Gosh, I've forgotten that now. Isn't that wonderful? A heroic figure, see? I mean, you could write this as an adventure story, could you? Well, it's an extraordinary life. Gosh, to think that I was lucky enough to read it. He wrote in Blackwood magazine a story called They've Seen Darkness. It was published in 1935, and that was, he'd been on an expedition in Mexico to a province where there is river blindness. And then he writes this mystic story about a community where the children have visions and where the old are blind. So that the old rely on the more or less the wisdom and sight of the young. And then it has a sort of mysterious ending, and it's and I have no idea whether we too now will be going blind ourselves, because of those who are on the expedition. Gosh! Oh gosh! Who did this painting? Okay, that painting is still with John's sister, and it was done in the 30s, and I don't know who did it. Very good painting, sort of.
There's nothing on the reverse of it, is there?
You see, John died in 65, and it was John's brother, who had lived in Ireland and had moved several times in Ireland and Florida, who sent me these things from Oregon, where he was living, Ashland in Oregon. And so he kept this all for 35 years.
Why did he send them to you?
Because I contacted him and said that I'm writing this book, and I was already quite a long way into it, and that was his reaction. And then I did visit him. I'm very pleased I did.
When did you visit him?
Would have been 2 years ago. 2 years ago.
Eau Vive was his great passion, because this was the place of spiritual regeneration as well. So France, not far from, is it the school? I mean, this captured his imagination and satisfied his the spiritual aspect of it. Post-war. Eau Vive. He spoke about it. Now, I don't know what this is.
I think that's a picture of one of the, yes, of Eau Vive. I think it's called.
Yes.
This, I think he lived in a little place called La Nativite.
Yes.
And I think that could be La Nativite.
This wonderful little house.
You never went to Eau Vive?
No, I didn't, but Sebastian used to speak about it.
Yeah.
A great deal, and that's the, that's part of it, isn't it? Yeah. Well, this is a terribly important place. Soisy-sur-Seine. That's not far from Paris.
No.
And that's where I was on holiday at one time, by accident.
Really?
Yep. Can't believe this.
Afterwards?
Yeah, but I didn't know. See, I just happened to
No.
Yeah. That's Sebastian. Look. Not Sebastian, Matthias, look.
Where's that taken? That's on the continent.
I know who these people are.
Yeah.
Matthias,
Yeah.
as you say, Matthias, and that's Marjorie Goossens. I don't know whether... Did you ever meet René?
No, I never met, no.
Did John ever talk about René?
He did. I'm sure he did, yeah.
Who was in Oxford, who moved... I mean, she's come from Australia, and John was her guardian.
So you see, this is one of the...
Now, Marjorie has been cut off that photo. Some people don't like her. There are different opinions about her. René has also published an autobiography, which is very, very critical of Marjorie. I mean, so it's absolutely public. She's written about it, and given that she was Marjorie was a stepmother, actually. That is John's grave.
That's it.
Where is that?
In St. Thomas in the Virgin Islands.
Oh, wonderful. Can anyone really explain how it happened that he should be so careless?
Oh, I'm sorry about that.
What's that? Did he drown there?
Well, how did you? I mean, what did you hear about the drowning?
Yeah. I mean, these are characters that just straight out of G.K. Chesterton. It's another world. This is the period when, in the 50s, after the war, oh gosh, when the Catholic Church was the Catholic Church, people actually wore that kind of sacred dress with that lovely hat. I wonder what
Very public.
Yeah. I was thinking that he was born to do what he had to do, and that's marvelous stuff. What's that? That's exactly what he was about. I always thought he had a touch of Montgomery Clift about him, or there was something extraordinarily mysterious about Sebastian, and with a tremendous sense of humor. I used to joke with Matthias and say, Matthias from the Bernese Oberland, and he used to love that. I said, that's where you come from, you're not German at all. From the Bernese Oberland. He used to love that. It meant he maybe, had some kind of connection with Celtic Scotland or something, poetic dimension, which is really contrary to the idea of Nazi Germany. You must tell me a little about possible. What I'm looking at here is the poem.
Yes.
And
these are poems that John wrote, and they're among these papers. There's some of the original drafts of the poems, and in fact, it was my son retyped them to get a text, because some of them are in slightly different versions, so we produced a final text. There are about 20 poems, but this is the only one that was published.
The only one? Why? That's amazing. Should have been more.
John wrote poetry. He certainly wrote short stories. But there's only one, again, the one in Blackwood that was published. I think there must be more.
Surely.
And he wrote 2 plays.
2 plays, which have never been performed.
Never.
That's why I think it's my job to present them. How long are they?
They're 1-act plays. They're short 1-act plays.
Couldn't be better.
I've got the text. I'm sure I've got the text of both of them here.
I'd love to see
It would be wonderful to...
Would that be commemorating?
Yes, it would be wonderful. I think it would be great if one could sort of do a sort of... because I'm hoping that, my biography it's all there in the draft. I have a complete draft of it. I just have to find a publisher. And so if I find a publisher, it could be published next year, which will be the year of the centenary of his birth.
Wonderful.
And then it would be great to have the plays performed.
I'd love to see the plays performed.
And there's other people who John's inspired. That's a picture there of an artist who John's inspired. Who lives in New York. He hasn't really painted since John died, but he lives in an artist colony in Greenwich Village, and he wrote this amazing book called The Cloud of Unknowing. So that's Barry. Barry Bandler. Have you heard of Barry?
Yeah. That's a name. With striking a chord of memory.
And actually, one of the things that I've got is the psychiatrists were interested in hallucinations. This is that's Barry.
Good God.
Beautiful, isn't it?
That's, what do you call it? Oh, that's last week. That's,
What nationality is he?
Oh, it's American. It's American. His father was professor of psychiatry, psychotherapy at Harvard. And a great deal of his life is shaped by his rejection and animosity, and the father's animosity. Difficult. I think it was difficult, but that was more or less, he's never recovered from having this very abrasive father who basically neglected him. But what I've got here are discussions of their audio discussions, and John Thompson speaking on these people.
Oh my God. Now, you must tell me, what was the name of the unit he set up here at in Oxford to care for, to study as well?
Okay.
What was it? It was called
He was at the Child Guidance Clinic.
It was a Child Guidance Clinic.
Yeah.
But, I mean, before he came, did it exist the way it existed? Or did
he existed from, in fact, it goes back to the early 30s. And there was a pioneering clinic set up in Edinburgh.
Yes.
And I think that Edinburgh clinic was a model for the Oxford one. Now we get to the point when John was a medical student in Edinburgh.
Yes, of course.
And I have to ask you, what did John say about Edinburgh?
He spoke about it with great affection. That's why he was so anxious that these two young men should be educated there. There's no doubt in his mind they weren't going to go to London or English medical school.
Yeah.
I think he wanted them to fall in love with Edinburgh. It was so funny to go and visit Sebastian, not just in Edinburgh, but in the environs of Edinburgh, in a place like Kirkcaldy, in the hospital there. I was very happy to be there, at home. And I think that was a kind of triumph. I mean, because Sebastian was a particularly sophisticated cosmopolite, and there he was at home in Edinburgh, working then eventually as I think it was one of his first jobs in the Kirkcaldy hospital. And they settled there, he and Marjorie, for quite a considerable time. And I think I must have visited them 2 or 3 times. But what's getting me here is the element of the life unfulfilled. I mean, if John has lived his full lifespan, there was so much work for him to do, and he was certainly, I mean, Sebastian having achieved so much, there was a tragedy there that he should die so young, ridiculous. I mean, he was destined for some kind of great achievement.
Yeah.
Cut short. So all this, there's a note of great tragedy written into the story.
Mm.
Not just because of the war and the madness of the Holocaust, and also the division of Europe, the tragedy of the German people, who ended up, I think, suffering just as much as any nation, and they still are, of course. They'll never really get rid of it. It's particularly important for me because of my commitment to people like Joseph Boyce, who suffered a complete mental breakdown after the war, having survived 5 years of frontline fighting. But my first real contact with Europe was, funny enough, through a kind of intellectual life, was through three Germans. One was Sebastian, the other was Matthias, and the other was a chap who ended up as professor of English literature at the University of Illinois, a chap called Peter Janssen. And he too lived amongst the ruins in Essen. And I remember thinking, there's something about Germany that's not going to go away, you know, playing a very central role. And of course, it was the spirit of Germany that was made manifest in the very first Edinburgh Festival in 1947 with great German music. And Bruno Walter conducting and all that.
And you went to the first festival?
Yeah, I was there. Did John go to the festival at all? Was he too busy? Can't remember. We didn't actually get, I don't think we mentioned.
Did John ever come to Edinburgh? Can I talk to you?
I think he came to visit Sebastian at one time.
Okay.
I will. Very fitting, I must say. But I don't remember. No, I can't. I need these to spare my memory.
But how did you meet John?
At Blackfriars. At Mass. That's how. And I think we got to know that I was an artist in conversation. And he had this idea, which he explained very simply to me. Quickly. If you paint a room in two parts, the same room, exactly, a proper painting so that people would be attracted to its colour and its the reality of it, and in one, everything in it, the tables, the chairs, the table laid out for a meal, paintings on the wall, grandfather clock, lights, all that, curtains, would all be absolutely as you would expect in reality. The other painting would be difficult to see at first sight as anything really different from that painting, except there would be very subtle differences which would suggest an unreal arrangement of things, where certain things were simply illogical, not working, and which would be noticeable to any sane person as simply not possible. And he wanted me to paint these two, so he said he would show both. and then ask questions with regard to what the patient would have to say about which one they felt comfortable with, and why they felt that one picture, and I think he asked them to make a decision, because which one was giving them a sense of themselves. What were they able to relate to in the painting. There were 6 sets of 12 paintings. I did them gladly because I thought that what he was doing was important. I never expected payment or anything like that, because I knew. And anyway, it was my first ever commission. I had gone into the army. I was in the Army Educational Corps visitor. And I was, as often as I could, attending Mass in the Dominican chapel, and the chaplaincy, which was the Roman Catholic chaplaincy for the university. So all the intellectuals would gather there. I liked the Dominicans because it was a monastic order. I just liked the very order of the service, because in these days the Catholic Church wasn't, it was recognizable as itself. So you would get the full flavor of the great ritual of the Mass and benediction. I used to go to benediction. It was comforting for me to go there to find out I had one thing in common with all the undergraduates and their teachers. And I don't know, there was some kind of conversation where I actually let someone know I was an artist, and he must have been part of that group, and then he was straight to me and said, perhaps something that you'd be interested to do for me. I painted them in gouache. You weren't watercolor. The color, it had to be color. Because there were certain aspects of the color that were subtly different. You know, certain things couldn't be one color in reality. There were certain things like, where was the light coming from? You know, where was the source of light? It would be about being able to live in a normal world, recognizing the scientific reality of things, logical positioning of things, and being maybe, I thought, not at all disturbed by aspects of the same room which made it surreal or impossible.
Did the room actually exist?
No, I have to invent it. Very interesting, isn't it? You trusted me. I mean, I was always drawing. I mean, it was natural for me to want to do this.
Did he tell you what the components were?
Yeah.
He described everything in the room.
Well, he did. He more or less said that it should contain furniture, a fireplace, window, door. You should be conscious that it's a room that you would remember you having been in it. And he suggested that very early on that one would be perfectly acceptable to a sane person, and the other, that very same person would question very deeply the possibility of the room being made manifest when it was perfectly obvious that it was illogical, that it wasn't working as a room. And he also actually, I thought, wanted them to prove to him, the patients, if they were able to observe certain things, you know, like there was the right place for everything in this picture, and here everything was perhaps not quite as it seemed. You'd have to look, you'd have to concentrate. You'd have to be able to pinpoint. They'd look, that's the other thing. He said they've got to look at first balance, is that the same?
But these were, who was meant to look at them?
The patients.
Definitely patients.
Absolutely. And he would show them, they were not framed, they were like on cards, you know, they were that size. And he would show both.
Okay. So more or less 18 inches.
Something like that.
2 feet.
Handable, holdable.
A4, A3, full set.
Between A4 and A3, not that big. It's big enough for me to see that I could manage them. I mean, I'm asking all sorts of questions of myself. I mean, did I have to bring the paints down from Scotland? Did I buy the paint and the material from Oxford? I'm not sure.
Did you stipulate the colours you would use? Did the colour have a different effect on people?
He trusted me to create the experience of a house, an inhabitable space. I would give anything to recover these paintings.
Yes, absolutely. I mean,
but the fact is that I knew there was great importance to him. He wanted to conduct an experiment. And he was terribly grateful that I did this for him.
You called it an experiment? Or?
Yeah. Well, it wasn't an experiment. I know you used that word, but he needed to conduct whatever it was. It was the part of a healing process or whatever. So he would know a little bit more about the inside workings of these, of the minds, of the brains, the capacity for holding on to reality that these people had. Well, who would it be if he was working with children? It would be normal problems amongst adolescents, children.
It would be adolescents.
Yeah, it would be adolescents.
That would have been the reason, because I know that he saw some other children, or some, I think through the Catholic Church, through some Catholic welfare organisation, he was doing things in addition to his practice. And I think those would have, again, it would have been adolescents. I can't.
In this area?
Yes. What date? But what date did you meet?
1954 to 56. And it was the end of 54. I mean, towards 56. 2 years.
Yeah.
Apart from the first 8 weeks or so of my training, I came straight here. No. Yeah. Because I think I met him whilst I was at the Royal Army Educational Corps headquarters, which was not Vista. I was lucky to see I was stationed for my training at the Royal Army Medical Educational Corps headquarters, which was closer to Oxford. It was in Buckinghamshire. What was it called? It was in the village associated with G.K. Chesterton, where G.K. Chesterton lived. Which village is that?
I mean, Spain is not that far, but
and then I got, I could have been sent to China or whatever, as a national salesman. I mean, I had the big decision to make if I took another year in the army and I'd become an officer. If you didn't want to do that, because they were tangling this for you, you would teach, but you wouldn't be allowed to be an officer. You could be a sergeant. sergeant in the Royal Army Educational Corps, and that's what I was, basically, when we met. And I remember sitting with him in his place of work, which must have been there, in which I could see, if my memory serves me right, he was very pleased with the physical reality of these images. You know, he was happy to be saying, oh, that's perfect, that's good, that's excellent. I can use these. But
John worked in South Parade, which is in North Oxford.
yeah,
But he lived for a while at the Warneford,
that's right. The Warneford.
which isn't that far from here, it's just around the corner.
Yeah, yeah. I think it could be there.
Warneford, so it would have been right early on when John came.
Yeah. Now, when did he actually arrive?
Well, Sebastian had studied here from 52 to 55.
That's why they overlap. And then he was talking about will you look after the two of them when they get to Edinburgh?
Right.
And that was the other thing. I was from Edinburgh. And I think he'd already made up his mind that they were going there. Of course, I did look after them. They became immersed in the...
Did John talk about his, did John say anything about his education?
Yeah, about Fettes.
About Fettes?
They mentioned Fettes.
Definitely Fettes.
Definitely.
And what did he say? Can you remember
It was a
anything?
good education. And I think he made reference to the fact the unlikely fact that Fettes, the very bastion of Presbyterian madness, had produced a Cardinal Heard, H-E-A-R-D, who became it was one of those cardinals who have to work within the political structure of the Vatican. So he was not a cardinal associated with any particular diocese. But he would have taken things, and they could have been contemporaries. Have you had any mention of Cardinal Heard? Because I said, there's no more Protestant an institution than Fettes. Its job is to mass produce white Anglo-Saxon Protestant officers to keep control of the Commonwealth and the Empire. That's its job. People even trust none of these arty-crafty or highly questionable popish people. So I mean, I couldn't actually when he said he was going to Fettes, couldn't really quite see it. I don't know if he played sports there, did he? I'm not sure how much he involved himself in the life of the school. Mm-hmm. But there must be a very good reason for him being sent there. Did his father go there, I wonder?
But was it a longer visit that he was there, or do you think it was just a short?
No, he was educated there.
Educated there.
As a boy. Certainly. And of course Edinburgh University was his great medical school, renowned throughout the world. I'm not sure. Did he know people like Maurice Carstairs and some of the people who were experimenting?
Okay, so the earliest I've got back, and I've somewhere in that pile there's some letters from 1929 about John Thompson, and some are written by him. When he actually came to Edinburgh, to the University of Medical School.
It would be 6 years of study.
Well, John did something quite extraordinary, because he was half the time in America, I've got a job at Swarthmore.
Swarthmore College, the ultimate Ivy League school for girls.
Let's see.
What was he teaching there?
He was instructor in biology. Yeah, I even know where he... Just found these by chance at the Rockefeller Archive Center in the Hudson Valley in New York, and there are these letters from February 1920. This letter says, I am making an introduction of no other person than my roommate. His name is John W. Thompson.
Yeah.
Now, he had actually been to Stanford University in California. He is a medical student here. I know nothing of him except that which one gathers from all living with a person for 4 months, all of which is entirely to the credit of his character, ability and accomplishment. And then he writes about what a superb person he is, with the idea that he could be recommending him for this job at Swarthmore. He was in a place in Juniper Green. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. The little cottage was called Enterkin Cottage.
People like that.
Enterkin Cottage.
E.N. Juniper Green is in the Frenchlands. Enterkin. E.N.
E-N-T-E-R-K-I. And these are some letters from September 1929 from John Thompson. And that's the earliest in the way of letters, except something to do with the kidnapping of his brother in Mexico.
What happened there?
It was his sisters kidnapped the brother. That was 1919 already.
Unbelievable.
Now that would have been a reason for sending him away.
Yeah, exactly.
Although, I more or less sort of found someone that, J.W. Thompson, he used to stay with a Miss Turner in Enterkin Cottage. Oh, great, pleased to find me. 1929.
Where did you think he was educated?
Okay. Not where I think he was educated, but where his younger brother and sister think he was educated, who are younger than him. Well, they are younger than him, and they're several years, 5-6 years younger.
Yeah.
So, they say that he was educated in Palo Alto High School in California. Now that doesn't exclude a period.
More adult period.
But the thing to do would be to try and find in the Fettes School record to see whether, these schools have got very, very good records. To see whether there is a Thompson who came at least for short, because this kidnapping would have been
would have been a motive for
sending him away, and the family said, well, their mother could have gone to Europe with the older boy.
He mentioned Madame Montessori.
Yeah.
And he mentioned Picasso.
Picasso?
And he mentioned Madame Montessori was very important. And he mentioned in the field of psychiatry, could you he always is talking always about Freud and Jung and you know, that I remember, which is fairly new to me because I wasn't particularly schooled in all of that. But he was certainly talking about the extraordinary impact of the war on vast millions of human beings, and how they were not going to quite recover. Not all dead, it doesn't matter whether they recovered or not, you think, except they must have have children, you know. So the war, I do think for him, ended in 1945. His position in the first years of UNESCO, what was it?
Oh, he ran the UNESCO German program. And that's, in fact, next week I'm at the conference, 60th anniversary of UNESCO, speaking about John Thompson. It was the idea that the Germans needed, it was to provide positive therapy to the Germans.
Yeah.
But it wasn't, because he'd previously been worked as a war crimes officer. So that it was to provide them, to really to start to focus on youth and to reform German education.
Yeah.
And he set up 3 institutes, one for social science, one for psychology, and one for and education. And it was an enormous achievement, and also UNESCO committee for Germany, the German UNESCO committee. And Matthias's mother was on the German UNESCO committee, which is interesting. But it was a great achievement because the Allies didn't, I mean, he would have had to go through normally the Control Commission, and the Soviets were trying to block UNESCO doing anything, and so he had to really to set the thing up, to get it going, to find popular support. He even wrote articles, he even wrote I found one article he wrote in German about UNESCO leading Germany and so on. So really interesting achievement. Even there's a diagram of the History Institute.
He's the kind of person who is struggling the world of art and science. Does he have any,
It's a little bit improvised.
is there any reference in you come up with, where he would have been reading the work of Thomas Merton, the great intellectual? Independent of him, maybe it was through him, I'm not sure. I discovered Thomas Merton.
Okay.
I tell you younger.
I tell you where I went. I went to see the papers of the Catholic Workers' Movement, Dorothy Day.
Yeah.
Then I had to go to Milwaukee, actually.
Sorry, Dorothy Day happened to be somebody I knew, but it wasn't the same one.
Yeah, no, and this is Dorothy Day. This was in New York, the Catholic Workers.
Right.
And they had Dorothy Day used to send him people who were in distress. They used to help, and he used to help with the soup kitchen and with the down and out. He used to talk to the down and out. They were down in the Bowery in New York. And yeah, that would have, in a way, Thomas Merton would have been another stage on, I think. I don't think that Dorothy Day had the same gift as a writer.
Yeah, but he was doing that at what age?
Well, he was involved with them when he went to New York, so after Oxford.
I don't think he had a friend.
W.H. Auden, Mr. Auden.
Yeah. But that's what I mean. Auden and Eliot and some of the American. I mean, one of them, Merton's great friends, was a guy called Bob Lax. And surely
One of them was a crossover through that.
the crossover, you see, Bob Lax was one of the leaders of the movement of fluxes, where there were deep questioning amongst intellectuals and artists of just the very fabric of society that had allowed all the madness between the two wars to come into being. And he was involved in what was called concrete poetry, a mixture of visual imagery and words. And through his letters of an enormous number, Merton was in touch with all the intellectuals, with everybody. And John seemed to be on that wavelength where he was meeting to Madame Montessori, and perhaps seeking her out. And he was meeting Picasso.
Where?
Everyone knows where. But he never spoke of Picasso to someone he didn't know. This impressed me, of course. You know Picasso? Oh gosh. Who else have you met, you know? And it would seem they had met most of the intellectuals in Europe after the war. So,
did he work in Europe? Did he explore it? Or did
he went into he went in with a Canadian unit seconded to the Royal Air Force in 45, and something I think quite incredible. They were stationed not that far from the concentration camp of Bergen-Belsen, and John Thompson did assist survivors of Bergen-Belsen. And there's a very powerful letter of thanks from the survivors, saying that for his kindness and his infinite patience with them, and it concludes then Ecce Homo. And John had really kept this, and that was among the documents that his brother had sent it over. And then I found, it was actually about 6 months ago, in the collection of papers in Montreal, of Carl Stern. Carl Stern wrote a book, Pillar of Faith, and he was a Jewish refugee neuroscientist, like John, in fact. And at some stage they got to know each other, and John writes this letter late at night. He's been working all day, housing in this hospital, the late shift hospital, I think it was in a stable, sort of converted stable, in a stud farm, I think, these concentration camp survivors. And he's extremely exhausted. And he writes about what's going through his head and how difficult it is to help, and what he's trying to give all of himself. And for him that was a great turning point in his life.
that is fascinating. What was the moment when you knew you were committed to doing something about his life? Who introduced you to him?
Well, the person who introduced me was someone called Keith Mant. And Keith was
But I was supposed to name.
M-A-N-T, Keith Mant. And Keith was a war crimes investigator. He then became professor of forensic pathology at Guy's Hospital. And Keith worked with John Thompson. John had this idea of a commission to investigate scientific war crimes. He said it's pointless just putting a handful of criminal doctors on trial. What you want to do is document the totality of it and then look at it from an ethical point of view, and unless that's done, these sorts of abuses will go on happening in medicine.
Yeah.
So it was incredibly prescient, and Keith and John Thompson worked together, and they had this very small, it was called an International Scientific Commission. which was based in Nuremberg at the time of the Nuremberg medical trial, and it was an amazing thing.
And you came upon his name through Keith Mant.
Through Keith Mant.
And he said, you were doing at that time, you were thinking of writing or investigating.
You were introduced him?
No, I wasn't I was writing a book about the Nuremberg medical trial.
Yes, I see.
And that was the reason for asking for interviews. Yeah, I went to interviews.
Natural.
Keith was. I actually what happened was I was working in the Pasteur Institute. On a completely different book. It was about typhus and delousing in the Second World War. And the archivist brought me these documents, which was about the Code of Human Experimentation and a meeting held at the Pasteur Institute, and it was chaired by John Thompson. John Thompson. And I thought, this is extraordinarily interesting, and on top of it, there is this Nuremberg Code for informed consent, which is meant to, which was at the end of the trial in August 47. Well, this code was July 46. Well, I thought this is really interesting, and so I had the idea of looking what's going on, and then I checked the names of the various people at the meeting in the medical directory, and found that Keith Mant was still going strong. I was very pleased. I wrote to him, he wrote back, phoned him, I went to visit him. So it's grew.
So which university were you at to be doing this?
I was at Oxford University, down here.
Which college?
I wasn't at the college, it was a research unit for the history of medicine on Banbury Road. That's Time magazine.
That's Time, I cannot believe it, that's him.
Yeah.
And it says, new bones for old. To patch broken bones, doctors use everything from rope to chromium nails. Last week in the Lancet, Venerable Dr. Ernest William E. Groves, Emeritus Professor, Surgery, University of Bristol, told how he had successfully used hunting trophies and soup bones as scaffolding for fractured arms and legs. And then it goes on. Last week, young physiologist John Thompson left his bustling fatigue laboratory at Harvard, bundled up his new and went to Kansas City. Reason he wanted to convince the Associated Military and Civilian Flight Surgeons that his ingenious device could effectively measure the reactions of pilots. Now this is fascinating. The date of this is...
39. 39.
What month?
It's the St. Paul. I have to find out. I have to find the...
Yeah.
I mean, that is just... Yeah, where it off.
I mean, did you correspond with John?
I don't think I did. I wasn't in a position to, because I was sort of in between. I was living in that camp. So I mean, it's incredible the depth of this, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, that's what I'm very. I mean, I've pored over these letters, and there is an enormous amount in them, and Eau Vive is it's been a real mystery and the French Dominican order has been very reluctant in releasing any archives. They've released a small amount.
What have you got from them then?
Well, I've got some material about the organisation of Eau Vive and but they still feel that there's some sort of scandal attached to the place. I don't know.
There is.
What is it?
I don't know what it is. That is. It was an experiment, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Like all experiments, after a while, it loses the sense of the orthodox truth that's at the heart of it all, that allows it to come into being. And I think it began to...
but you see, yes?
Well, I think it began to experiment in its whole attitude to religious life. It's not that it didn't attract, it continued to attract very holy, well-intentioned people. Put it this way, it's typical of the kind of institution that becomes more important than the church itself. You know, so you become more loyal to Eau Vive than you would. Warneford Road, Oxford.
It's around the corner around it.
And it's Morgan. Who was Morgan? Kara Morgan.
Yeah, she was the Sebastian lodge with her.
Yeah.
And Rene also lodged with her. They were a Catholic family.
Yes, he was.
John Blight and John felt that they were in safe hands. Does the name John Van mean anything to you?
Yeah. It's a big, stirring a big memory. I must send you the photographs of Sebastian and Matthias at my wedding.
When was that?
1956. 27th of November. That's how close they were. I felt a great, conscience about having to look after them. It's beautiful.
You see, John's effects would have gone to Frank.
Mm-hmm.
And Frank, unfortunately, is no longer alive.
Yeah.
A nephew wound up the effects and so on, and I know that Frank said, look, he said, I've still got a lot of my brother's clothes, and we went, he had such enthusiasm. We went to the Russian tea room, and then he ordered himself 6 Russian shirts, and so on, and, those are the sorts of things that were still there, but,
he was a great lover of life, wasn't he?
Yes. I mean, that there was as well. I mean, there was a sort of anti-white fine clothes.
And he had a sense of la bella figura, the beautiful appearance. He's very conscious of his appearance.
Yes.
It's fascinating, his lessons, it was moving. I mean, truly as a father's lessons. And that's corresponded with a son he wishes to do well.
Yeah, absolutely. John's sister, not that long ago, sent me another batch of papers.
Madame Montessori.
And you see, that's just at the time that you knew him, John, Oxford.
Same time.
He prepared this lecture on her. So to have
known her, to have loved her, through my love for her, I've understood to some degree at least what she attempted and to an outstanding degree achieved. I was thinking to those who did not have this privilege. Let me say at the outset that I believe her mission to rank among the great by virtue of its noble intention, its artful execution, and its memorable achievement. It has, in the words of Thomas Carlyle, operated changes in our ways of thought, and when this much can be said, the hallmark of greatness is surely there. A love for children. See? The concept of education. This letter alone is of the greatest importance. Absolutely.
The infuriating thing about John Thompson, he published next to nothing, so that's a great deal, and he loved communicating, either by letter or personally. Direct, that was what counted. So that Richard has a unique insight into John, because they were in effect in sort of communion with each other, and it was clearly so deep. And long-lasting.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it, that we just trusted each other. I mean, I had no doubt in my mind I had to do everything that he felt was important, help him to make it happen. Ashland, Oregon. And this is a letter from
Frank. So Frank, we used to, I used to correspond with John's brother. When I got to find out that it was quite difficult to find the living brother and sister. There's a name Thompsons from college.
Oh, I see, yeah.
And I did know that there was a Thompsons in Mexico, but I couldn't trace the internet. Anyone called Thompson in Mexico would get a message from me and said, I don't know, reply. And then it was, I visited a student of John's in New York. And it was on the second visit, she said, yes, I think I may have something in the cellar. And that was a letter written from way back when Frank was living in New York, and Margaret, and also the other brother's address. And I wrote to the other brother's address, and then got the widow. Well, actually, she then forwarded my letter to Frank in Oregon. So I got, after 3 months, I think, I got the letter back, and that was wonderful. And they're very, I mean, both the brother and sister were very, I'm so happy with Margaret. Yeah, terrific. And I visited Margaret as well, so that's, you know, lots of... And there's John's library in the psychiatric hospital. And it's a wonderful library. Did he ever lend you books?
I don't think so. Because of my life in an army.
It was a computer to you. When you left the army and went back up to Edinburgh?
My contact with John was through Sebastian.
Yes, so you didn't really see him again
No,
after that?
not really.
Yeah.
But I was kept informed by them. And I learned of his death from Sebastian. The great sadness. In fact, I was shocked. I couldn't believe that he could have gone, you know, aged
59.
Yeah.
It wasn't that long after, was it?
He was a contemporary of Frank Ashton Watson.
Did they know each other?
Don't know. I wish Frank Ashton Watson created the Ministry of Economic Warfare. And he was a poet. And he knew, I think, Madame Montessori. And he was great friends with Peter Sackville-West and pilot refusers. And he won the Nuremberg Prize for poetry at Oxford. And I'm sure there were contemporaries.
And you sometimes get a great deal comes through knowing Auden. And he's certainly in a polar ward, an age of anxiety, because the Canadian Air Force Medical Investigations Officer. And also, it's absolutely John Thompson, because Auden sends him a book. Auden sends him a dedicated copy, and he inscribes it from the bartender to mail-in from the bartender. The figure in the poem is called mail-in. Anyway, through Auden, there's many connections to James and Tanya Stone.
Yes.
And Stephen and Natasha Spender. And that seems to me an important, a great many...
Well, Virginia Woolf and the Bloomsbury group in the background there, could they be reading? He refers to reading Virginia Woolf.
And T.S. Eliot and Sidwell. So it's to be the but he has a terrific knows so many people.
I know, that's overwhelmed me.
Yeah.
I could name any name and he'd met them. It was not just Picasso, it was that whole artistic milieu.
The French. He's the French. Yeah, he was in Paris or something.
Yeah. Yes, when he worked for UNESCO, you see.
Yes, that's right. And he was, at that time Picasso was prepared to go to the big peace conference in Poland, that's right.
Yes.
And he was a communist.
Yeah.
Intellectual.
I mean, what did you make anything from politically?
I thought he was apolitical. It was about politics. That he wouldn't have made the mistake of. No, his love of humanity made it impossible for him to simplify things and end up, carrying a flag for one particular political system. No artist can actually really get him out of the political system. It's not possible. Although there are basic principles, such as what happens when human freedom is reduced by the all-powerful state, interference of the state. And obviously the imbalance between the state and the individual, which is evident now, is sickness indeed. We are living in a police state, much more subtle than Nazi Germany. I keep thinking, we talk lightly about this. We're not going to incarcerate people for 28 days, nothing, 28 days if you're an innocent person without recourse to any kind of normal means of giving your views is hell upon earth. And it does smack of the almighty power of police force.
And John hated what he called the welfare state.
Yes.
He became very disillusioned.
Yes.
I mean, he was working, doing child guidance work within the service. He was providing for it. But I think didn't like the idea that individual dedication, and you would give so much of yourself, and yet you were hamstrung by bureaucracy.
He must have known that was the worst thing that could ever have happened. I've been fighting against being hamstrung by bureaucracy all my life. I'm a free individual. And everybody's telling me, you doctors and forms and you get this and that and everything. I keep saying, well, if I do get whatever from this, that and the next thing, it's poisoned. Or it's limited. Weakened.
I mean, do you have any correspondence with Sebastian?
Yeah, I did. That's the point. But my correspondence with Mr. Sebastian is so many photographs I have.
Mainly photographs. There's no letters.
I'm sure there are letters.
Where would they be? In your private?
I went to see Sebastian in Canada. In Toronto. And my wife Anne spent a very happy time with them on another occasion. I wasn't there, but she was there. And she became the godmother of the son.
The difficult thing in the biography is that what I hear about Sebastian from, say, from Natasha Spender, who was very close to John, and Sebastian was really wild.
Oh yeah.
Wild in the past. He had a wild past. And I think one can't, and it's quite difficult to write that and not to, because he was wild. I mean, he was a street child. He was a runaway.
Mongrel, in a sense.
He had John met him and he was a runaway in Berlin. He was on the street with some sort of, I don't know, he was on his own or with a gang or something, but he'd run away from his mother, and it was a very strange situation, I mean, family situation, I mean, was a very, so that, he was a wild kid. And John rescued him, and his brother, Wolfgang. Wolfgang.
Well, that family, which was created by John's intervention, then became part of my family. Because, I mean, there were only 28 people at that wedding, and they were special guests. And there they stand, St. Fridoano's, St. Ninian and Fridoano. What's that?
Well, I'm going to give you a book.
Gosh!
There is something of John Thompson in it, so
I need you to sign that.
Oh, I'll sign it. Yeah.
And funny enough, this is a period where which becomes absolutely vital to my whole life.
There's a great deal about Polish survivors and John and a number of other I mean, John is only there as a group of war crimes investigators, medical war crimes investigators. But John he coined the term medical war crimes.
God, really?
And he put the war crimes people together with the scientific intelligence units too, and said, look, these are special categories of criminality, demand special attention, special expertise. And it had a terrific impact behind the scenes. They would never have seen a medical trial in Nuremberg if it hadn't been for him.
Oh, really?
Oh, absolutely, yes. So that's my entry to the thing, but I mean, what I'm trying to do now is a completely rounded biography of John's life as a life, really,
as a person, as opposed to medicine man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As somebody who began, I suppose, fairly conventionally in medicine and medical research, and then moved away from research in animal physiology. He stopped doing research on animals very, very early.
When did his parents die?
After him. So they both lived. He died before. He would have been the first of the families died.
He wasn't really on holiday in the West Indies, was he?
Yeah, he was. He was. He was exhausted. John would take a holiday when he was exhausted, but it wasn't a break. It was a tragedy. It was a tragic situation. I mean, I've talked about it a lot with his brother and some others who feel very responsible because John had asked him to come along with him. And they all said, oh, we were too busy, and so that they feel guilty that they let him go. Yes, at the last minute, absolutely last minute, I think it was one of the youngsters he was mentoring was with him. Because I think he was just wanted someone to sort of be like a sort of a buddy, and so that and it is a mystery, his death. It really is.
It is a mystery.
There are different. I mean, I don't know how you heard of it. Did you?
Well, I mean, it is a mystery because the weather wasn't that bad. Isn't that right? Is that right?
Yes.
The perfect dig.
Yes.
So did he have a heart attack or what?
He was in shallow water.
Yeah, that's what I mean, in shallow water.
His brother thought that he just fell asleep underwater, which you can do apparently. The other view is that he had overexerted himself and it was a heart attack.
Yeah.
Which could also have been, I mean, he was, as I understand it, he drank a little bit,
Yeah.
He's been very exhausted.
I can see him, in my mind's eye so clearly. And the nearest I can see him as a figure like that. But I do recognize them there as well.
Can I take a photo?
Certainly.
I've seen, I know you did, but I'd like to have a photo with you. That's very nice.
I'm now realizing I'm so much older than he is.
What? Well, I mean, for heaven's sake, good thing.
Terrifying.